So is it okay that we're recording?
Yeah, Magdalena just asked if I'd
Okay,
be okay with that.
okay.
I'm fine.
Just
Thanks.
wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, before we begin, I want to acknowledge that I am zooming on the ancestral lands of the Tongva Gabrieleño people, the original stewards of this territory, including the San Gabriel Valley. We honor their elders, past and present, and recognize their ongoing connection to this land. Welcome to all of you. I'm Karen, and I'm hosting today. Lena is managing the chat for us. Thank you, Lena. Um, let's take a minute to just open up the space by taking a deep breath in through your nose on 8 counts, and then out through your mouth with a sigh on 8 counts. Just in the sake of time, instead of going around and introducing ourselves, maybe we could do that in the chat. Just write your name, where you're zooming from, how you're connected to the collective, how you found out about this. I think most of us know each other, but just to say hello. Here comes Gina. Um, so today, for our monthly community meeting, we have an author talk with Corinne Dempsey, whom I had the good fortune to meet in Rochester on my stay there last fall. Synchronistically, she had her book launch while I was there. So I thought it would be just really nice to invite her to talk with us about her book, and especially because we talked about her interest in maybe becoming a doula when she retires. So I'm just thrilled that she agreed and is joining us and is going to talk to us. Corinne is professor and chair of religious studies at Nazareth University in Rochester, New York. She teaches on world religions, Hindu traditions, comparative mysticism, and war and peace in world religions. Her ethnographic research and writing has been with Christians in South India, Hindus in the US, spirit workers in northern Iceland, and most recently with women over 80 in California, Iceland, South India, and the Sisters of St. Joseph in Rochester. If asked, she would tell you that her most rewarding project so far has been her most recent one in the company of older women. So Corinne is going to talk to us about her book, A View from the Edge. I'm about halfway through it, and I'm just thoroughly enjoying it. Or A View from Life's Edge, sorry. Discovering what really matters with older women across the globe. So Corinne, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Karen. I really appreciate this opportunity. And it was really serendipitous sitting next to you in this group that we both sing with, but in different places, Threshold Choir, for people who are on hospice. Um, yeah, I don't know how it came up. I just said, yeah, I'm thinking, I'm retiring. I'm thinking of being a death doula. It's like, what? So we had this great conversation. And just to connect, why I'm thinking that way with things that maybe you're interested in is my work all along has been about spirituality, and um, the work I've done in Iceland has been with people who connect to spirits, which has never really been my thing. Mediums and stuff has not been my thing at all. My work has been in India as ethnographer and here with Hindu communities. But I have a good Icelandic friend who died actually a few years ago, who talked me into coming. And as she put it, talking to the people who talk to dead people. So it totally blew my horizons, not even widened, just in terms of realities. And I'm interested in mystical experiences anyway. And so these people that I met have day jobs. They don't make money, and they have this ability they can't get rid of. And so they use it for healing. And really admirable people and their admirable theologies. I also sing for Threshold Choir. We hang out with people in hospice. Um, 4 good friends of mine recently have died, and I've accompanied them, done Reiki with them. I think it's such an honor. So it just kind of feels, and then this project with the women over 80, it just feels like, oh, there's a lot going on here that kind of would perhaps be, it might be a good thing for me to do. So I haven't even started. I'm not even really able to follow all your really amazing conversations on WhatsApp. So I just haven't had time in the middle of semester is really a lot. So this is an honor also then to be able to share with you a bit of this book. So I appreciate, Karen, your I don't know, invitation, I guess. And Karen was there at the lunch where at the end of it, and there were 100 people there. They did not expect that to happen. This is a topic that I think resonates with people. And we finished the evening, my part before the Q&A, with all the threshold women that were there. And it was almost all of them except for one. And Karen was there. And we sang a song by our dear singing sister, Fran, one of my dear friends who's died recently, about abiding in what's holding us in peace. And the nature around us is what holds us. And we abide in that. And she came up with this song. She's a songwriter when she was in the middle of a terrifying MRI. And this idea of abiding really just kind of came to her in this really, really hard time. And it reflects what I find in the stories and opinions and viewpoints of older women. When you get to a certain point, when you're looking death in the face, your view of life shifts. And that's what I'll talk about. Yeah, there's a realism that's beautiful. There's a mysticism and wonder that's also beautiful. So I got into this because of my mother. She and I were very close all the way through. And when she moved into a retirement home in California, Bay Area, this was like, I don't know, 10 years ago, 12. 16. I have a husband here who's making dinner. So he's going to start. Anyway, so she was enjoying meeting all these women at this retirement home that were just so interesting. Their spiritualities were so interesting. And Mom is watching me, flit all over the world to India and to Iceland and various places. And she said, self-servingly a little bit, you should just stay here and interview the women in our community. And I thought, what a great idea, to hang out with these older women and interview them. So I was just finishing up the book on Iceland and thought, I think I want to do that. And then, of course, rather than staying right here, I thought, and I can go to India, I can go to Iceland and interview them too. So it grew into 4 groups when the Sisters of St. Joseph, who are the founders of our university, I gave a talk there on this particular mystical thing that I will tell you about at the end that happens to like a quarter of these women early in life. It's fascinating. After I was done, they were at their dinner table, one of the dinner tables, saying to each other, why isn't she coming to interview us? And a good friend of mine told me she's one of the last sisters standing at our university. And she said, they're wondering why you're not going to interview them. And I thought, I've got plenty. I have more than I can, all these transcripts. I had 124 transcripts. And what do you do with all that? So I said, I feel like, Iceland, California, India, it's a triangle. It just feels good. And she said, Corinne, they're a dying breed. And they are. I don't know how much you're aware of nuns who hit the convent in droves when it was a great opportunity to do all sorts of things. At the same time, it was really severe pre-Vatican II. So they've seen a few things, and this particular group were very involved in civil rights, and they're amazing, and they are a dying breed. So anyway, so it's 4 groups that I ended up interviewing. What I did, I started off asking them about, I started in California, asking them about religion and spirituality. And it really, as you might guess, Californian women who are in their 80s are ahead of the curve. I think in the US, a lot of us are, people are nuns, N-O-N-E-S, and a lot of these women were too. And they didn't even like the word spirituality. It was just trite, So I thought, okay, I guess we're not going to talk about religion. So I ended up asking them about things of significance and leading questions. What memories stand out to you growing up? What would be a life lesson that you feel you've carried with you? What do you feel sacred? And things like, can you present me with a poem or a song or an object that has significance and tell me about it? And these conversations just sort of blossomed from there. And I would say maybe, the average conversation was an hour and a half. Some went, depending if the woman is a storyteller, there were some that went 4 hours of, them straight, me asking questions and follow-ups and follow-ups. And this project, as Karen mentioned, is really my favorite of any project. And part of that is because these women were so very entitled. It's not like, oh, why are you asking me? I'm just a little late. I mean, there was this, no, okay, I'll tell you about my, what I think is important. I'll tell you about what's sacred. I'll tell you about my memories that stick out. There was a sense of they're ready to do it. There's this confidence. And there's a clarity that comes with that, clarity of what matters, that I believe is something, and this I've read in various places, it happens when you're looking at death. And this is not just older people, advanced older age, but people with terminal illness as well. So I just kind of in the introduction, I have a paragraph that kind of explains what the book is about. So I'll read that. So I lead up by talking about this confident clarity that I found. It was a joy and an honor to find. It boils down to what this book is ultimately about, which is a reckoning with the reality that older age forces upon us, that life lies outside our control. This we learn through death's imminence, but also upon losing things, faculties, abilities, friends, as the years advance. Our orientations must adjust for sanity's sake, even if it's in fits and starts. Key to the process, and also to what this book is about, is a loosening of structures and certitudes normally meant to keep life's unwieldiness at bay, held more tightly in some cultures and by some people than others. Their stories, the stories and opinions that women shared with me repeatedly reflected this loosening, a chipping away at the illusion that any of us, at any stage, are captains of our own perfectly sailing ships. It's a countercultural realism that often leans into wonder, a curiosity at life's precarious edge. It's not the same as hopelessness. What has been important for me to glean and now to pass on faces a double challenge, however. Inasmuch as we strive to deny out of fright life's finitude, we deny older adults their voices. A central conundrum of ageism is that we silence out of fear that which could quell our fears. So that's where I come from. These are my broad discoveries across cultures. And so the way the book is put together, and I'll read excerpts from the part 2 and 3. The first part, which is probably where Karen is at this point, is where I go through each of the 4 places, each of the 4 locations, and talk about patterns that are really reflective of the landscapes that they live in. So that's part 1. Part 2, I call The Real, which is women's view of what matters is grounded in this realism that is countercultural. I don't even want to start going into the various details, but I talk about how their religiosity is countercultural. How women either give up on God if they feel, this God has betrayed them, they rearrange who God is, or if it's the case of India, they hold on to who God is. And in all cases, the God that works is not one that's up in heaven, that's damning or blessing. It's the one that abides with them And this is across the board. That's what works. I talk about memories that are of beauty and love are always embedded in hardship. So they're not giving me this perfect scrapbook, here's my reality, but they talk about how beauty and goodness is seen when things are hard, which we know. We know this to be true, but that's not how our culture works. We want perfection and eternal youth and all that good stuff. And then there's a chapter that I'm going to read bits from, which is framed. So what I do, it's not all about religion. There's some religion that comes in, but I frame a lot of my understanding of how these things work. Like a way to understand sort of these realisms is through Buddhist ideas, typically, a logic behind Buddhism, and sometimes mystical, like non-dualistic religious ideas. So when it's not about religion, different religious sort of frameworks help me kind of flesh out what's going on. So any questions so far? I feel so weird just blathering. I'm going to try not to go too long. I'm hoping for 45 minutes and maybe we'll have time to talk. Okay.
Corinne, I
So
just want to tell you,
yeah.
want to tell you that there are still 8 people here. It's just that people have turned their cameras off.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I get that.
just,
Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to let
No.
you know that.
I do love to see the faces, so I don't feel so lonely, but I do understand, people's lives.
And the meeting is an hour and a half. So however long you want to talk, and then we'll have some time for discussion, hopefully.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Karen.
Okay.
All right. So this is called chapter 7. I don't know if you've gotten there, Karen, maybe not. Called Lost and Found, the Fruits of Letting Go. All right. And I often cry when I try to read this. Karen knows this. So we'll see. We'll see how I do. All right. What has life taught you? More than any other question, this one tended to stop women in their tracks. To be honest, I was impressed when someone volleyed an answer right back, and I sympathized with those who balked. Given a moment, however, everyone had something to offer, and across time and space, 2 broad lesson themes emerged. 1, to let go of expectations, and 2, to trust in an enduring goodness. While letting go and trusting might at first appear to pull in opposite directions, they can also serve as interlocking puzzle pieces, forming a logic that takes shape over long lifetimes. One way to tease out this logic is through the core Buddhist teaching of anicca, the truth of impermanence. The importance of this truth is that once realized, it exposes the futility of our desirous grasping, and upon letting go, our suffering lightens. Mahayana Buddhism adds that by letting go of self-serving desires and expectations, we discover our true nature, an infinite source of wisdom and compassion known as bodhicitta. Put another way, by submitting to certain uncertainty, our hearts can unclench and an inexhaustible goodness can rise to awareness. While some women described letting go or trusting in goodness as singular separate lessons, they were often entangled. Defying normative structures and inclinations that keep us vainly chasing after control, these lessons keep to the course set by the book, in which the clarifying view at life's edge is discovered to be countercultural. Let me first state the obvious. People are less likely to deliberately let go of futile desires in order to awaken bodhicitta than to be dragged into such awakenings. As Pema Chodron, who some of you might know, she's a Buddhist teacher, as she puts it, we tend to discover our true goodness and wisdom, quote, when we can no longer shield ourselves from the vulnerability of our condition, from the basic fragility of existence. Okay, now I will give you some examples. So I go into women's stories of, at first, it's really the most common lesson, especially for Icelandic women, it was every one of them. And it's 20 women in each place, by the way, 32 women in Iceland. In India. Anyway, the Icelanders all said, what have you learned? And they say, not to judge, that everyone, there's goodness everywhere in people. And it's usually something that takes place over a lifetime. So in some cases, this was brought home in a single encounter. Such was the case for Judy in California. When I asked her for a life lesson, she told me she'd learned not to judge. This led her to recall an incident from when she was 9. It was during World War II, when German prisoners of war were at times put to work on American farms, filling in for young farmers who were overseas fighting. Living in Massachusetts at the time, she described how, when playing at her best friend's grandfather's house, he told the girls over lunch that in a field just behind his house, German prisoners of war were harvesting potatoes. Seeing their curiosity, he offered to walk them over to take a look. Judy recalled the scene. So we walked down, one on each side of him. Eyes wide, she added with a laugh. And we were clinging to him because it was, and she stopped and I said, scary? And she said, yeah. And as we got closer, we heard singing. And as we got even closer, we saw them. As the daughter of a professor who grew up around college students, Judy remembered her shock. They were, the same age as the college kids that I knew all my life. And they were throwing potatoes at each other and singing, having a wonderful time. And I thought, Judy's voice lowered, this is the enemy? Jolted by her point, I whispered, oh my God. As I unsuccessfully tried to hold back my tears, Judy handed me a tissue. Wanting to get us back on track, I asked, so how did this affect you? Holding up, how did it affect me? It affected me all my life. Holding up my tissue, I said, it affects me. What I mean, Judy explained, is that I remember many years later, when we were in the middle of the Vietnam War, someone was making slurs about the Viet Cong and how bad they were, demonizing them. I said, everybody is somebody's father, somebody's son. Judy teared up, somebody's brother. And that came from that experience. Near the end of our interview, I reflected back on how this story was such a powerful testament to the way war relies on dehumanizing the enemy. Careful with her words, Judy said, in war, the enemy must become the other, not an other, but the other. And the next story I'm going to tell involves my mom, who told me stories I'd never heard until I had a tape recorder going, or video, whatever, a digital recorder going. I heard things from her that are so precious to me, which says something about the interview setting. It's time away from time, and I think it gives people permission. So another type of goodness that women described as abiding beneath life's ugly veneer was found in nature. We follow this theme more fully in the next chapter, yet I mention my mother's story here, since she framed it as a lesson and as something that arrived when the rug was pulled out from beneath her. When I asked her for a song or a poem or an object of significance, she took out a book of Mary Oliver's poems from her bookshelf. Opening to Wild Geese, she read it aloud. Although my mother was not easily reduced to tears, unlike her daughter, the reading moved her. Wiping her eyes, she explained that this poem had come to her mind after the fall of the Twin Towers on September 11th, 2001. Called to jury duty earlier that morning, she sat in a large hall filled with people waiting for their assignments. Together, they watched the horror unfold on television monitors mounted around the room. All we could see, she said, is what was happening over and over, over and over, and people falling. And oh God, it was awful. Arriving home that afternoon, Mom went for a walk down our street. At the end is a single chain-linked divider. It looks out into redwood trees and wilderness. I stood there as you get past the post, and I looked into that beauty, she said. Whispering, she repeated, that beauty, the trees and the ferns, all of it. And I watched the squirrels and an occasional bird, and I thought, yeah, the world is continuing. The world's continuing. Returning to the poem, she reread, tell me about your despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Setting the open book on the coffee table in front of us, she said, yep, the mountains, all of it, everything is there. And the wild geese are coming home. Picking up the book, I reread the poem's final lines in which Oliver's geese, on their way home high in the sky, remind us over and over of a deeper belonging. Shaken by a world irreparably shattered, my mom's encounter with nature further stunned her. Oliver likened such realizations to a homecoming, to a recollection that we all, in fact, belong. The TV loop Mom described, playing the horror over and over and over, was drowned out by a truer call, over and over, to remember our place in the family of things, prompted and promised by nature's abiding beauty. Pema Chodron similarly describes bodhicitta, discovered within despair, is in the genuine heart of sadness. It's like a coming home, she writes. It's as if we'd had amnesia for a very long time and awakened to remember who we really are. In Iceland, I sometimes heard women use the phrase, "Ég trúi á það góða," I believe in the good. When I asked my friend Ola, who accompanied me to these women's houses, to elaborate, she felt the saying implied a keeping of faith, despite evidence to the contrary. It could refer to a belief in human goodness despite our shortcomings, or in the goodness of nature, despite its dark and dangerous seasons. It also seemed to point to a spiritual force that permeates and connects humanity and nature, an alternative to the standard Christian belief in God as a separate heavenly figure. When older Icelandic people used the phrase, it sounded to Ola like a holdover from Old Norse beliefs in nature sanctity. Svala in Iceland used the phrase when describing her beloved great-grandfather who cared for her in early childhood. With eyes glistening, she said, "He taught me to believe in the good, and that is the main part of my religion." For Svala, faith in goodness was linked to her faith in the power of God, of love, in God's love, she said, for human beings, and in love between human beings. This, she in turn applied to the natural world. She said, when we tend to things, they grow. When we tend to our flowers, we care for them like everything we must tend to. Svala insisted, we have the ability to make things better. With our goodness, life can be better. Helen in California related a similar faith in our chain of influence. After explaining how death was for her the great unknown, she went on to assert, but what I do know without a shadow of a doubt and am daily influenced by and moved by and reminded of is the ripple effect of everyone who lives. We are so profoundly influenced by everything that we read, hear, notice, grasp from others, and it stays. Circling back, she said, so the person dies physically. You never see them again physically, but I believe in the ripple effect. The next morning, Helen elaborated in an email. She wrote that if we could only commit ourselves to choosing stones to throw that are smooth and good to handle, we can create fine and far-reaching ripples. Like Svala, she envisioned love as the engine driving this positive connective force. And this is from her email. For me, connectedness, a sense of continuum, and the making of good effort are all at the heart of human potential, of spirituality, and are encompassed in that other great all-important word, love. love. Sorry. I'm really happy I made it so far, actually. Oof. Okay. Yeah, set a new record, says Nick. Love is in everything I write here. Love is in all the striving to and hope of mending hurt people. I think it's because of all this stuff going on in our country and planet today. Anyway, love is in the work of coping and art. I need to stop here before I sound verbose, repetitive, mundane, and trite. Thank you. Any of the awful things that can happen so easily when trying to write about these wonderfully large subjects. Thank you again, Corinne, for the conversations. Love, Helen. So this reminds me of the founding sisters of St. Joseph, whose God, and this is back in the 17th century when they founded this order, whose God was far from being the guy with the long white beard. Rather, divinity was an all-encompassing force of love, binding them to one another and to the poor and forgotten who they accompanied. It's not service, it's accompaniment. Enlivened through their work, this divinity as love resided within their striving to and hope of mending hurt people, of repairing a broken world. And the word that comes to me is tikkun olam. It's a Hebrew word, mend the world. Placing their trust in this vast divine goodness, they also, by founding a new religious order, trusted in ripples. So I'll just finish. This chapter finishes with just a word about hope. So for Pema Children and Anne, a woman I referred to earlier in California, hope is a problem. They rightly argue that by holding tight to expectations and outcomes that we hope will shield us from suffering, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Buffered by hope, we shut ourselves off from the abundance surrounding us, from the bodhicitta, that's our true nature. And yet, Anne conceded possibilities for hope. This is not so much a contradiction as a different use of the word. Rather than unrealistically anticipating sudden and complete delivery from suffering, it's a clear-eyed hope in a goodness that abides within life's turmoil itself. It's like the divinity that women across cultures described as worthy of devotion, one that does not so much rescue as accompany people through their tribulations. Different than denial, it fuels the capacity to persevere. It helps us to muddle on. It's a kind of hope that enables an unclenching during difficult times. It's a hope and an enduring goodness that helps us to let go. This is what Rebecca Solnit refers to as hope in the dark. In her book by the same name, she portrays this hope as lying outside expectations, beyond particular coordinates and control, as resisting the certitudes of both cynicism and naivete. To hope is to gamble, Solnit writes. It's to bet on the possibility that an open heart and uncertainty is better than gloom and safety. To hope is dangerous, and yet it's the opposite of fear, for to live is to risk. This insistence on hope might sound naive if it weren't so often hitched to older women's hard-won, long life lessons. Resonating with Richard Rohr's reflections on life's second naivete, we could call it mature hope. As Rohr frames it, during the first naivete that typically steers life's first half, we tend to follow established rules and religiosities. The second naivete, arriving after we've weathered some of life's confusions and pain, is where we find ourselves living more comfortably with doubt, uncertainty, and mystery. As certainty loosens its grip, hope gains traction. This is the last paragraph. In the throes of uncertainty in his 80s, Carl Jung reflects, I'm incapable of determining ultimate worth or worthlessness. I have no judgment about myself and my life. There's nothing I'm quite sure about. I have no definite convictions, not about anything really. And yet, he writes, it seems to me that I've been carried along. I exist on the foundation of something I do not know. In spite of all uncertainties, I feel a solidity underlying all existence and a continuity in my mode of being. This unnamed something more that imperceptibly sustains us can rise to awareness when bodies and high-rise buildings are crumbling. The subtle hope it engenders, I submit, is realistic. Brought into view through women's experiences of despair and destruction, it serves not to shield or to save, but to accompany and carry us along. So that is an excerpt from part 2, The Real, and again, framed by Buddhist ideas. So I'm going to just read a little from part 3, The More, which dips into this capacity for wonder. And I'm going to read from the chapter that's on death and nature. These are, as I phrase them, portals into the more. Talking about death, talking about nature opens into the more. The second chapter in that, there's 3 chapters. Second chapter in that section is on entities, spirits, saints, deities, angels, and they're very much according to culture, and lots of stories about these particular entities. And then the last chapter of the book is actually my favorite, and it's called something. It's about something that I call frameless presence, and I want to finish by talking about that because I find that to really strike a chord in people. But before I go there, I'm going to read from this chapter on death and nature, and just read a couple stories that are, here we go. Combining the two. And I think I lost the page. So death and nature are, here we go. Okay. Spoken about, I write about it separately. It's so funny. I thought I was being polite not to ask people about death. And in our very own American mainstream culture, I think that's normal to do. But I went to Iceland, next. And Ola, the woman who was accompanying me, at the end of our second interview, and I can understand Icelandic, I'm okay at it. She asked it, can I ask a question? Add a question? I go, sure. And this woman is kind of frail. What was her name? Adalheiður. And she asked her, so what are your thoughts on death? And I could understand her, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this poor woman, don't do this to her. And the funny thing is that she totally perked up. It's like, death? Oh, let's talk about death. So we laughed. I said, oh my God, that freaked me out. And it turns out that Icelandic people love to talk, older people like to talk about death because death is so near to them. There's a lot of reasons for that. And I went back to California, and the women there said, oh yeah, no, let's talk about death. But they agreed if they were, at that time I was in my 50s, if they were in their 50s, they wouldn't have felt comfortable asking about death. So there is a comfort. And I find that in literature, there's a comfort that grows. So anyway, death, and then we talk about nature. And so here are 2 stories that combine both. And they're, like I say, I dip into your WhatsApps to little stories. And I noted at one point that you look for signs. I think that's beautiful. And I think you should trust them and embrace the wonder of those things. I believe in them too. So this is kind of like that. 2 women in California. All right, we finish. I'm going to have a sip of my tea. All right. So it's called, this last section, In Praise of Wonder, a Higher Incomprehension. And that's actually a term that, if anybody knows Abraham Heschel, Rabbi Heschel, he's a famous theologian, I guess, Jewish man, obviously, he's a rabbi. Okay, so we finish with wonder itself, beginning with three especially charged accounts that weave death and nature together. Helen's story was her response to my question about how she experienced the sacred in her life. Straightening up, she said, I have something from just the other day. She told me that her cousin Susan had died of leukemia the week before. That morning, Helen saw a text from Susan's sister written at 5:30 with news of her passing. The rest of the day was filled with, as she put it, gazillions of texts and emails from family and friends. And at its close, during the last part of sunlight, Helen said, she sat in her apartment where she was sitting now in her red chair. She said, I wasn't looking outside, I was just staring into space, which incorporated seeing the outside. And I was thinking to myself, Helen looked over at me, I was going to give this day to Susan. Oh no. That's what I thought in the morning. That was what I was going to give this whole day to Susan. And here I'd been running around like a squirrel in a cage. And then my eye focused. The sunlight was coming through the petals of that flower. Helen motioned to a potted plant with bright pink flowers on her patio. And you know what sunlight coming through a petal looks like? I mean, there's nothing. Stopping to catch her emotion, she said, it's a sacred moment. And then, Helen chuckled softly, I texted Susan's sister, the cousin that I'm extremely close to, and I said, outside there's this flower. And I described it to her, and I said, I wish that she could see it. And she texted back, and she said, I just did. And I said, oh, because of the way you wrote it. Sorry. Helen nodded. And it was about Susan, and it was so important. And interestingly enough, Susan had absolutely no service, no memorial service, no funeral, no nothing. That was her desire. And so, of course, that's what we did. And several people said to me, is there going to be a memorial service for Susan? And I just say, no, she didn't want one. Helen smiled. My brain says, when people ask me, yeah, there was one. And that was it. Thinking back, Helen said, and it was a minute of time or 3 minutes of time. Trying to apply words, Helen said, it's something we can't put our fingers on. And something else I love about these huge things is that there's sometimes something that's almost funny in the most wonderful way. Now, the sun does shine out here almost every day, and that plant is there. And I've seen the sun coming in on that plant over and over again since and before and since that moment has happened. And now when I see it, it's like, oh yes, Susan. And you almost laugh because it's just so right. Jan added a death and flower story at the tail end of our interview, like a giant footnote. I had turned off the digital recorder while she was rummaging through the rocks I'd painted for one to keep. Looking up from the rocks, she said, I have to tell you one more thing. Enthralled by Jan's stories, I said, yes, and clicked the recorder back on. My daughter died right here in this room. Shocked, I said, she did? Oh, I'm so sorry. She took an overdose. It was April 19th. What year was that? I'm pretty sure it was 2011. Dates escape me, but I know it was April 19th. So almost a year ago, I was watching my garden out here on the patio with the potted plants. And there was this weed growing up. I thought, wow, that's growing really fast. I'm going to watch it and see what it turns into. Well, on April 19th, it was a big sunflower. It just opened up. And that was her favorite flower. Jan laughed at my shocked expression. So explain those things to me. They aren't just regular things. As Jan and I shook our heads at these irregular things, we marveled at cosmic humor that's almost funny in the most wonderful way, as Helen put it. Collisions of sorrow and beauty. Helen and Jan's wondrously poignant stories are bafflements. Their incomprehensibility magnify their importance. So I'm going to finish that chapter. I believe, yes. This inclination to wonder that ripens at life's humbling edge is something to which we might all hope to aspire. It's a counterforce, as Richard Rohr sees it, to the certainties of religious dogmatism that are dangerously on the rise. Authentic spirituality has always been rooted in wonder, Rohr contends. People who have had any genuine spiritual experience will always know that they don't know. They are utterly humbled before mystery. Abraham Heschel likewise submits that awareness of the divine begins with wonder. It is the result of what, and he uses old-fashioned wording, it's a result of what man does with his higher incomprehensions. Impeding our progress is our acquiescence to conventional notions, to mental cliches. Wonder or radical amazement, the state of maladjustment to words and notions, is therefore a prerequisite for an authentic awareness of that which is. As this book repeatedly demonstrates, as one's grip on life loosens, so often do conventional notions and convictions. Becoming more comfortable with earthly disappearance, mystery is welcomed more warmly, and higher incomprehension can take root more easily. Older age maladjustments, valuable in their own right, become all the more so in our era of hardening, narrowing certainties. Closing in on decomposition, a view from life's edge, like humus, may well contain some of life's most vital nutrients. And I use humus because earlier in that chapter, this Icelandic woman talks about humus as, a long story, it's a funeral sort of saying, and humus is like how we go into humus and we rise up. And I don't know if you know, humus is like decomposing matter. It's soil as it's still decomposing, and it's the most nutritious of soil at the same time. So decomposition is nutritious. So the last thing I just want to say is from that final chapter, chapter 10, which was my surprise. Another surprise one was that everybody wanted to talk about death. And this actually, Helen comes up a lot because she's such a good storyteller and very profound. Started with my very first interview in California, and that was with Helen. And she started out, she's like the only person who was not raised with any religion. She's from Berkeley. Her dad's an artist and very bohemian upbringing. So, she knows I'm a religious studies person interested in spirituality, but she's game to talk to me anyway. And she just wanted to, clarify that she wasn't raised religious and not inclined. And then the next thing she says is, but I've had experiences. So she told me a couple of them. And the first one she told me is when she was 14 years old, and she was tasked with babysitting a distant cousin whose family dynamics, and the cousin was 12, and crazy, awful family dynamics. And poor Helen, and it was in Colorado, and she's from California, and she was away from home, and she was totally miserable. And she's describing in this exquisite detail, she says, I was crying, I was beside myself. I'm walking on this little path up in the mountains between the house where they lived and then the great aunt. And I'm walking on this trail, and I see, this and that and the other thing. And she said, I'm as miserable as I've ever been. And then there was this moment, and she said, I don't know, maybe 6 seconds again, where I was completely gobsmacked, that's my word, by beauty. I had this overwhelming sense of the beauty that is. That's often the term that women use, that which is. And she said, I'm not saying that I was, a brilliant child, that I had these philosophical thoughts. I mean, it just hit me. And she said, and I don't think a day has gone by without my thinking about it and reflecting on it. So I thought, wow, Helen, that's really powerful. Good for you. That's really cool. And actually, it happened pretty quickly. The next person I talked to, Nora, had a similar experience. She wasn't having a crisis, but she was 10-year-old. She at that point living in Hong Kong, walking on the beach. And she said because I asked her, who is God to you? I kind of tried to angle out that because she was someone who talked about God, to tell me more about what that is. And she told me about this experience that, again, it lasted maybe 3 seconds. And she's telling me about it and the fine, fine detail of it. And she starts crying and she says, it was perfection. And then she said, I don't ever tell people about this. And I'm thinking, wow, what's happening? And as I continued talking to these women, 1/4 of them, only one person in India, which is interesting because I think the women in India have so much formal religion and devotion and things going on. Maybe it's just doesn't come through. I'm not sure. But in California, in Iceland, and the Sisters of St. Joseph, they all, for 1/4 of them, more than 1/4 in each of those places, had these stories. And when they told me, and I didn't ask at the end, finally talking to the Sisters of St. Joseph, after I'd heard a couple stories from them, finally, when I talked to, the remaining 5 or whatever, I said, have you ever had any of these experiences? So I wasn't looking for them. But it was the same pattern of time standing still, a sense of, absolutely zeroing in on what was going on in that moment. And the sense that it's with them. They'll never forget it. And what's amazing is so many of them said, I've never told anyone, or I may have only mentioned this once before in my life. And who should have one of these experiences but my mom? I didn't even ask her for it. And in her case, and this is true for a few of them, it's a bodily feeling. And they describe it the same way. Whoops, they use these hand motions. There's no description for it. There's nowhere to put it. Mary Oliver actually has one of these experiences. Somebody cued me into that. I use a woman, Dorothy Sola, who's she's a theologian who's interested in mysticism. She talks about this as something that people have, but we don't have names for it. And yet, I think it is significant. It has to be. And I think it's significant that women are, at this point in their lives, comfortable talking about it, because a lot of them said, I thought people would think I was crazy. And it's also this environment of interview. I think it kind of gives people permission, but it still matters. And that's that. And I have not had these experiences. I wish I had. Maybe I have, and I just didn't cue in. But I like to sort of end there, and then I'm just going to read the final paragraph of the book, because people I think they resonate with that. It says something about who we are. Anyway, so the chapter itself, I get all the different stories, and I think more, break it down some more. So the last paragraph of the book is like, what do we do with this? What's our responsibility to older people who have this countercultural realism, this ability to wonder that we can all benefit from? It's tough. I think we're not doing a very good job because we push them as ageism. It's just so powerful. So I say, last paragraph. The accounts that fill this book show us how, as the prosaic fades and disarray closes in, a sense of what really matters can clarify and strengthen. Becoming more at home with uncertainty, possessed of a higher incomprehension, older women deflect society's impossible norms. They're impossible. What we are fed that we should be. It's not healthy. Their stories and reflections confirm that in reality, nothing in life is under our control. Those who generously shared with me are thus beacons among the ranks of the socially illegible that must include older adults, with little choice, but to think differently. When I say socially illegible, I'm referring to people on the margins in general. They're beacons. So the older folks, people, I lean on this point about older people one last time, because advancing age so often means getting left behind, even by social critics whose work is admirably broad. So in the world of scholarly critique, we hear, of course, racism, sexual orientation, gender, but age is not brought in. I also do so in recognition that older age, with its attendant sorrows and joys, is where we are all headed. Old age, sickness, and death, Buddha's trifecta of inevitability, become levelers for a larger cause. By acknowledging vulnerability and dependence as central to our existence, by centering life's edge itself, we can better understand what it means to be more fully alive together. So that's that. Thank you.
Wonderful, Corinne. Again, I mean, the first time I heard it, it was wonderful. The second time, it really resonated so much more because I started reading, but also just it's a lot. You're covering so much. There's so many ideas and experiences within those interviews that's so mind-opening and relevant to what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how much time do you have? Because I know
Mm.
we can hear the chopping and grating going
Yeah.
on
Oh
here.
no.
I'm
And
wondering,
what's
like,
amazing?
what's going to happen for your dinner?
Yeah. He was even using the food processor, and I was waiting for but he did it very quietly. So he's being very quiet. 7:30, which is, what is it? 4:30 your time is
Yes.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So, if anyone has questions, we can have questions, discussion. I
Well,
just
I'm
want to
one of the
read to you. Sorry, I
oh,
just want to read to you. Phoenix had to leave.
Okay.
And she wrote in the chat, thank you so much for sharing your work and presence with us, Corinne. Deeply appreciative for your reflections and wisdoms shining through in these interviews.
Yeah. Thank you.
So,
Yeah. Thanks.
yes.
I had a question, Corinne. I'm curious, when you started this project, how how you how you came to choose the groups that you did. Like, what made you decide these 20 California women, these 20 sisters, these?
Yeah, and so I probably should have connected the dots, because I didn't want to like go on, but yeah. So Karen reading, she's done this and that and the other thing. So in that mix of things that I've done, so those are all that what she read out are projects of mine. So they became books. So I spent a lot of time in each of these places. And I started out, my dissertation was on syncretism in Kerala in South India. I don't know if you know India. So I went there for the dissertation research. I went back numerous times, made friends. I bring students, and I know the community. So going there, it was wonderful, reconnecting, talking to people's mothers and aunts and grandmothers and whoever.
Mhm.
India. And then Iceland is because of the project I did because of my friend Solveig, who suggested I talk to dead people, which I at first thought, well, I'll do that for a side project, because I'm really not into mediums. But then when I realized, this is really, there's something happening here, and these people are just felt they're vulnerable. It's not a money making glitzy thing, and there's a certain, doing ethnography, and Karen and I talked a little bit about this. There's a certain responsibility that comes with it, because I think if you really are present to them, they trust you, and you have a responsibility to honor that trust and how you work with their hearts. So I made, again, close friends in Iceland, going back and forth, for 8 years to do that project. So there's those two places. And then California is my mom's place. And I really was going to stop there because that seemed plenty in three very different places. but the sisters, and I'm glad I stuck to just women, because first of all, it's just more practical. If you're going to talk to people over 80, you're going to find a lot more women than men. But I also felt like, obviously, we don't hear women's voices, especially that generation. And I also feel like it just was warmer, going and talk, and they knowing that I'm just talking to women, it just felt warmer. So yeah, with that, I could add the Sisters of Saint Joseph as women. So that's why it's where I knew people. It wasn't strategic at all, but I was happy that they're very different places.
Yeah.
Good question.
And say again slowly, or maybe type it into the chat. I would love the phrase, that I believe in the goodness phrase. I think it was Icelandic you said again.
Let me find it. Ég trúi að það góði, but I want to get it right.
I just love that.
I believe in the good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I really do. I'm glad you like that. Okay. Yeah. And it's not, it's just something that came up. It just kept coming up in our interviews. And so I finally asked Ola, what is that? She said it's older people say that. It's just kind of, here we go.
If you tell me the page, Corinne, I can type it in for you.
I can do it, but I can type it in because I know how to, maybe you do too, to make the funky characters, which is really fun.
You do it.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. There's that. Okay, here we go.
I like it though.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's go to chat. Let's see if it'll let me do the funky character. Chat. How do I? Boy, it's been a while since I've chat. Okay. Oh no, I know what to do. I open chat and then I just start typing. Come on, here we go. Okay. See, I'm sharing the screen. Okay. Right. Yeah, true. I just want to make sure I have that right. Sorry. Oh, there it is. True. Okay. Yeah.
I believe in the good. Is that translation?
It is.
I believe in the good too.
Well, yeah. There's a whole world to think about what that means, right? Okay, I think that's it. God, why do I keep losing it? Oh, well, I'm sure that's it. Okay. So, ég trúi.
Oh my gosh. All right.
Trúi á is honor in það. So it's like, I'll write it as you pronounce it here. Okay. So ég trúi á. Well, I'm going to leave. Well, okay, we'll go. How would you spell ow? O-W. Then það góði. Yeah. Oh, spell check is having a field day.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they really don't want me to write these things. Yeah, they keep changing that to yes. Yeah, trúi á það góði.
Oh, that. All right. Now I can take a picture of it.
Yeah. I believe in the good. Yeah, and it's interesting. Ola, my friend, so good about. She loved older. She's about 20 years younger than me. Old soul. I think young people who get into this work are old souls. Tess. She just loved these women, and she was so good at kind of reflecting on generational things and what they mean, and this idea of the good, and it totally makes sense. I believe in it. I mean, you have to say I believe in it if it's challenged. If it's always there, why bother, right? So the good, it's really despite all the things, and people and nature and in reality. So yeah.
Good phrase for these times.
Yeah, believe in the good. I'll do that.
I really appreciated and being worked by the term, I think it was countercultural realism.
Mm.
I find that so fascinating that the true, these undeniable things, including death, including the mysteries that we all live with, are truly countercultural.
Mm.
And how much, I mean, I can only speak for my own, but how much our culture is steeped in this denial of fantasy worlds that, for example, doesn't honor the archetype of the crone and the older feminine, and this whole body of wisdom that we could really, really benefit from. So I'm just, thank you for creating space for those stories, and I can't wait to read the book.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for being an old soul young person. We need more of you. I find that actually I teach at a university, and when I teach about older people, it's amazing what that sparks in some young people. There's a profound appreciation. And I would say what your work is, and maybe someday mine, how countercultural, a death doula. Oh my God. People are so afraid, and you're just like diving in. My mom, I knew there was another element. My mom was a grief counselor. She worked for Stanford. She was somebody that they assigned. She lost 4 babies, 3 of them, 1 stillborn, 2 miscarriages, and 1 a crib death. So she had 6 pregnancies and 2 children. I was almost the last pregnancy. And what's interesting is, she also was not afraid of death, and she was such a upbeat, positive, always looking good, but she loved that work. And I just remember people not understanding how she could do that. And it's a lot, listen, just again, popping in briefly to your conversations. I think a lot of what she did is similar to what you all do. She accompanied people, and it would be sometimes people who are dying, and sometimes people they'd be relatives of people who were dying, and they'd come. She loved that work.
Yeah,
it's real. It's real. I mean, you can't get more real than that.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and there's medicine to that reality. I think that unifies all of us in this group for sure. And it reminds me of something you said at the beginning, one of your quotes about the thing that can help us is what we're running from.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. The thing that can quell our fears. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The thing. Yeah. Is
that.
Yeah. The last line of that paragraph.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How many people are you usually? I mean, what is your the size of your group? And I mean, if there's no other questions, I'm just curious how your group works. I don't want to cut off any questions if there are any.
I'd say we're usually between 5 and 10 that attend the community meetings.
Okay.
Do you think? Does that sound right?
Yeah. Lena, do you have a number on how many we actually have now as members or on the WhatsApp group who have signed up? Are you there, Lena?
She may have taken a break.
I think, and then I go back and forth, and I'm in another group too, and there's this constant you'll get some people that just say I can never come that time at that day or whatever,
Right.
and then it's just a juggle to try to. It's 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 a juggle to try even with Zoom.
We actually have 23.
Oh yeah. So you see Lena's note there. It says,
Oh,
sorry to head out, but have to. Thanks so much, Corinne. We have about 27 on our list, but some just get the emails and aren't in the WhatsApp. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's a large group, but the active members are smaller.
Right.
It's sort of like, as you probably experienced, Karen, the threshold, choir,
Yes.
whatever. I mean, there's a roster, and
Right.
then there's the people who are regulars. Yeah.
Right.
What a great idea, though, I think, to have that support. And the photos that came through, I was signed up for the WhatsApp, I think soon after you had, or before you had an event at somebody's house.
That was my
Around.
house. Yeah.
Yeah, that looked wonderful. I wished I
It
was
was
there.
so great. Yeah.
yeah.
We wish you were there too.
Yeah.
It's really our richest event, always every year, I think.
Yeah. So it's an annual thing. Yeah.
I hope it's
Reading
always
the book. Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions?
How have all of your sisters? I'm just curious because I'm just recently kind of getting involved with the Sisters of St. Francis down here.
Oh,
And so have they all read your book? Because I know that my sisters are reading a book called The Age of Ripening or something, which I haven't really got much past the 4 or 5 pages. So it's on my bedstand, but for whatever reason, I just haven't
got pulled in. Yeah.
gotten in there yet. But
Yeah. So 20 of them were interviewed, and they all read. As much as I'm able, I have people whose words are in it, or just who might be interested, read the transcript, or the draft. So they passed it around. They all read it, and they're very happy. Because especially the chapter, as you might know, Karen, there's chapter 4 where I talk about them.
Yes.
I just, it's kind of sensitive stuff because they, anyway, they're really interesting the way they entered the convent at that generation. They didn't have parents wanting them to go. That community, I mean, they really went against their parents' wishes. So it's not what we think. It's not what I thought.
Yeah.
So they are bold.
Yeah.
And they left. I mean, so they could only, at that point, only see their families once a month for 1 hour. But they were able to teach, they were able to do nursing, and what they saw from the teachers that they loved, and they also knew the teachers who they were scary. I mean, that was there too. It was like this sorority. I mean, it was just awesome in a good way. This group of women who were just so enthralled with life and their spirituality. And so they joined up, and then Vatican II happened, and a lot of people left because it loosened in part, but it also gave them this freedom to embrace their founding understanding. So this God that was judging just completely went away. As much as not in I mean, that's a process, but in terms of the theology, that was no longer. So they've been through a lot.
And how did you get connected with the sisters? Were you?
Well, they are the founders of the university where I teach.
Oh, okay.
So I go,
Yeah.
like I said, there's one nun standing. She's in my department, Susan. So they don't wear, in terms of what they look like, just so they don't wear habits. Thank you. Yeah. And that really, social justice issues, working with the poor. They had a hospital in Selma, outside Selma in Alabama, that was the only hospital within 9 counties that would serve Black people.
Oh, boy.
And John Lewis, when he was beat to a pulp, they took him to that hospital. They saved his life. And those are the Rochester Sisters of St. Joseph. So he would always tell the sisters who, are still alive that worked with him that they saved his life. And their job was not to create dependency, but to train young African-American women to be nurses and to carry on, which they did. So really amazing. And working, there's pictures of them with Martin Luther King at the hospital, and they've lived lives.
What's the title of chapter 4?
On their own terms.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Susan, did you have something you wanted
Yeah, I
to?
was just going to say that she's reminding me a lot of Sister Joan. And I was wondering if you ever met Sister Joan. She's a member of the Threshold Choir who was like more active until fairly recently. I think she's 90 something.
Wow.
We went to sing for her on her birthday and visit her
Mm.
at the convent of St. John of the Cross. And her friend, Sister Celeste,
Celia.
they Celia, that's it. I have first letter association. They met on the train coming down the coast from the Pacific Northwest to join the convent, and there were 16 young women
Mm.
on that train
Wow.
going to join the convent at the same
Wow.
time.
On that
And
train.
on that train, and they all became friends. And the two that are left are sisters Joan and I want to say Celeste again.
Celia.
Celia.
Celia, thank you.
Celia. What do you know what order they belong to?
I don't know, because St. John of the Cross is like a hospice that takes a lot of people from. They're all, like in different orders.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure
Yeah.
what, but I know that like I took grief support from the Sisters of Carondelet, and it was a very similar kind of teaching order.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's all that same age and it's all
Right.
that same generation.
Right.
And they were escaping their parental expectations of getting married.
Okay. Good you that was your finding, because there's another book out there about nuns, in the Midwest, and the woman who wrote it, I really love her work. She works with aging, so I'm interested in her work. But she talks about these nuns in the Midwest as like families that were, all these nuns and priests, and they just kind of were going with the flow. And that was not the stories, one after another. And a lot of them came from families where one of the parents was not Catholic, or, they didn't go to church ever, or they just really just, tried to bribe them so they didn't go into the, I mean, it's really strong. So I'm glad you found that too. That's good.
Yes, yes, Sister Joan talked about it. And she said, they were like 19, 20 years old, and they were like sharing their last cigarettes before they entered, stuff like that.
Yeah. And it was strict back then.
Oh, very. And they're still friends. They've been friends for like 68 years.
Wow. They've got stories.
They do.
It's awesome. That's really great.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, when you were talking and you got to the part about, I think someone was talking about God and what it means, and the whole idea that it's not about service, that it is accompaniment. It just struck me so deeply because of, I mean, any experience that I've had as a doula. I haven't had a lot, but especially most recently because my client was, I had connected with her, over a year ago, 13, 14 months ago. So it was really an experience of walking alongside and accompanying for quite some time, and especially obviously at the end. So it's interesting just because we often, when we talk about doing this work, that's the word that comes to mind is service. But that difference, that contrast between service and accompaniment is so significant. And I just really resonate with that now after having been in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Service sets up a hierarchy.
Right.
I am serving you. You need me to serve you.
Mhm.
And it builds ego. I mean, but service is good. You want people to serve and to be selfless. Yeah. I think even the Threshold choir that I'm part of, that Karen knows, we keep trying to figure out what to call what we do. And Marcia, who's Jewish, is trying to figure out something that doesn't sound like ministry. Is it service? What do we call our when we come together for rehearsal? And I think the word practice is kind of nice. It's something we practice. It's
Yeah.
just it's something over time, that you work with.
Our threshold choir uses the word practice.
That's good.
Like
Yeah,
we don't rehearse because we don't perform,
that's right.
right? But we
Right.
practice,
That's good.
right?
So
And
what do
then
you,
there's so many ways the board practice works because it's also a spiritual practice.
right, exactly. It's a
Right,
discipline. Yeah.
right,
Right.
right.
So what does your group call what you do? Is it ministry? I mean, I don't think, yeah, it's really
I think we
churchy.
just call it singing bedside.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it's
I've
like,
never heard any other term besides
yeah, I never
Yeah.
have either.
Yeah. Okay. So I think she's trying to fine tune, when she talks about, she's our spokesperson. Yeah. I think there's
So she would
probably,
have a need.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. Like for me,
Yeah.
it's, it's what we do. But yeah, singing bedside. Yeah, just leave it at that. And good. Okay. So changing to practice makes sense on a lot of levels. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. So are you both Karen and Susan? Are you in the same?
Yes.
threshold?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
That's how we
that's
met.
how we met. And then
Okay.
Karen dragged me here. No, I'm just kidding. I
And
I
we're so
followed
happy
recruited
to
Karen.
have
her.
her.
I followed Karen here.
And actually, this group started through Threshold Choir.
Oh,
I
wow.
met, there's a co-founder that is no longer with us, whose idea it was actually, and she and I and Phoenix, who was here, but she couldn't put her video on.
Mhm.
The three of us actually started the conversation. Then we started organizing, and then Jeannie joined us quite soon after that, and Alexis.
Yeah, I
Um,
think Alexis was already in, and I think Tess was already in when, and then I
yeah, but
came in.
Phoenix came to Threshold and I met her in our Threshold practice along with this other member who then we were doing it for about a year and then didn't work out with her. So Phoenix and I and then Jeannie and Alexis was also coming to Threshold. So that was like the seeding of this group.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. So I think we're needing to end. Corinne, thank you so much. This
Thank you,
Yes.
Corinne. Really,
wonderful.
really, really loved it. And you didn't
Yeah.
put the title of the book in the chat, so hold it up again one more time.
I'll
Because
write it.
I got A View from Life's Edge, but then I didn't get the
Subtitle,
yeah.
Discovering
What really matters.
What Really Matters. Yeah, if I can
Well,
write it, I'll be great. Discovering What Really Matters with, oh geez, with older women across the globe. What really matters. It's going to really matters. Older, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Gina, one of our members who's also off video, is saying thank you so much for sharing and reading, Corinne.
Mhm.
Yeah, just
It's a pleasure. And thank you, Karen, for organizing and all of you for your work. It's really rich, really real.
yeah. And we're looking forward to having you join us more in the future.
Yeah, yeah. After May, time will open up. I
Yes, you're
look forward to
retiring
it.
in May, yes?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Last semester is my last
Yeah.
semester.
What order are the sisters? What order
Yay.
are the sisters in your book?
They're Sisters of Saint Joseph.
Okay.
And I will see you in Rochester next fall.
Oh, great.
I'm
Oh,
coming back.
good.
Yes.
I look forward
For
to
the
it.
annual visit. Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, great to meet all of you. I wish you all the best in your good work. And thanks for listening.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Corinne.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Karen. Great community meeting tonight.
Yeah,
Thank
lovely.
you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.